About our next topic, which is lists. All right. So we're on lists. Those of you who know R, this is not an R list. They are very different. Well, there's some like similarities, but they're not the same. All right. So let's talk about lists. It turns out you've already been using them the last couple of days. What's a list? Well, in Python, a list is it's an object, a data structure that basically allows you to have multiple values within a single data structure, all right? And you might have different lists of like numbers or names, for example. And the way you specify that is with a square bracket. So if you've ever seen a square bracket in the last couple of days, likely is that you were working with a list. All right. So let's take a look at some basic lists that we can create. Maybe I'm going to be looking at like a bunch of data related to pressures, not my field, but maybe like physics or something. So I have more than one pressure. So one maybe experiment resulted in a pressure of 0.273, and then maybe another pressure was 0.275. I mean, I can do like pressure 1, pressure 2, pressure 3, pressure 4, but that's so redundant. It'd be nice if I can put all of those pieces of data in one data structure. So we already saw the data frame, which is something similar, but this one's going to be a bit more simple than that. So let's start with our square brackets. So open square bracket. And then when you want to put another piece of data, put comma, right? So you're going to separate your values by comma. Maybe I had another data point, 0.275, then another, 0.277, etc. Okay, so for this particular example, I should not do it manually. I'm going to copy paste it. For this particular example, I have a few data points. Okay. And if I wanted to see if it worked, so just as a reminder, just because this happens a lot, if I run just this, nothing happens, that's great because nothing went wrong. And I got a number, meaning it was able to run. But if I want to see what's in here, I can either have as the last line, just retype the object name, which is pressures, or probably better to put a print statement, right? So print, and then I'll put pressures. Okay. And you can see that it basically prints the values that I created. If you're going to be printing multiple things, it might be good to have some message in here. So maybe I want to be clear that what are these numbers? These numbers are actually pressures. So when I try printing that, you can see that I added some text here. So it's clear what these numbers are. Okay. How many values do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's not too bad. But what if I had like a really long list? I don't want to be counting manually. We have another function that you might have seen earlier when we were doing that wealth analysis. You noticed that it was dividing it by how many columns there were. So it was actually getting that from this new function called len, or like length pressures. Okay. So if I use this length function to a list and run it, it's actually going to count how many elements are in it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 5 in here. Okay. And similarly, to make it more clear, like, what is this 5? Where did that come from? I can add a little helper message with my print, like this is the length. Okay. So far, so good with creating and displaying a list. All good. Okay, thank you. All right, so maybe I'm not interested in all of these numbers. I want just to call back a specific number. All right, so just as we saw earlier today, Python doesn't count like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It always starts 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so by index, not necessarily by position of the different numbers in there. So by index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what if I just want the first number? So we can call that out or subset it. First the full list, and then to subset, use square brackets again. And I just want the first one. What number do you think I should put? I just want this first number, which is Python is index what? 0. Good. Right. So that's the first item, but 0 index. Great. And again, if I want to be clear, what am I doing? I should add some kind of note, like this is the 0th, I'm going to say index of pressures. Okay. Now, help me out. What do you think I could put for the last one? So what number should I put for the 1, 2, 3, 4, this one, the fifth one, right? It would be that, yep, it's the 4th index. So the 5th value is the 4th index. It's always that n minus 1, I minus 1. So 4. Okay, good. Everyone's familiar with it? So this might seem like something that is not a big deal, but for those of you who have taken coding in other languages, this might be a shock. But I can actually change the numbers in here really easily. For example, it's like, oops, I don't want this to be 0.273. I actually meant it to be 0.265. Okay, so let's try that. So I want to replace this number, with 0.265. Okay, so this number, we've already found it. We used pressures, the name of the list, and the 0 index. Now I can just easily set it to another number, which in this case, I wanted it to be 0.265. And then let's check if it's actually working. I'll print the whole thing again. So pressures, it's now going to be what? Called the full list. Did it work? Originally 0.273. Now it's 0.265. All right, so it's actually that the values within a list can be changed. Maybe you're thinking, big deal. But for a lot of coding data structures, you can't do that. At least not this easily, all right? So that's a benefit of Python is you can change things relatively easily, but it also comes with a cost. Things may be changing behind the scenes if you don't pay attention to it. And if you're running a calculation, you might be getting something you're not expecting. It could be that somewhere in the code, something got changed, right? In that cases, as you're learning more Python, you'll learn ways to prevent these things from changing. Okay, let's try another example. Now let's make a new list. Since we know lists can be created relatively simply, help me out. Make a new list called primes with numbers 2, 3, 5. How would I make that list? So you want a new list? Yes. Yep, good, good. So the new list, we'll call it primes. And we're going to set it with values. How do I create a new list? Remember, it needs those square brackets. So 2, 3, 5. Do I need to put spaces? You don't, so you can do that or don't. It's recommended to put spaces because it makes it more readable for human beings, but the computer doesn't care. Okay, so we got that down. And if I wanted to print it, you can either just call it by itself, or to be safe, put it within a print statement in case you have more stuff. So like primes is initially, because we're going to change it, this. Now let's do something. So we want to add something to the list. All right. I mean, I guess I can go recreate it and add it here, but in coding, you're going to want things to be more automatic than that. So maybe at some point I wanted to add something to the end, right? So you're basically trying to append something to the list, okay? And what we can do is this function called primes.append. So anytime you have an object that's a list, it's going to come with this method called append. And as you might expect from the name, append will add on a new value to the list, specifically at the end. All right. Let's say I want to add on the number 7. Okay. And then let's check out what did it do. So primes is, or has become, primes again. I'll call it back. Oh, look at that. So just with dot append, it's going to know to get my original list, add a new value to the end. Okay. And then I can see that it's already been changed. Any questions? All right, let's do some more. Okay. What if I had 2 lists? Okay. Let's say I have 2 lists and we're looking at, I guess these are ages. One is going to be, I'm just going to copy paste it so I don't accidentally put some bad data. One is going to be a list that we're calling teen primes. So I guess teenage ages that are prime numbers, and middle age primes that are these numbers. Okay, so we have 2 lists. And if I look at my original primes, it should be what? Should be this one that we just created. Right, so let's check that out. And then we'll see what happens as we keep changing. Was that a question? I'm sorry. No? Okay. And so if I'm going to start with my original primes, which primes is currently, and then I'll just put primes. And we didn't do anything to primes here, right? I'm creating 2 new lists and I'm just going to print primes again. So we should expect this, right? So if I run it, it's the same. Okay. But let's do something. What if I try to add to this list? I want to add these numbers. So 11, 13, 17, 19. I mean, it's going to be a pain, but I guess you could do append 11, append 13, append 17. That's going to take too long. I basically just want to get this list and add it to this list. So I'm basically trying to extend my current list. And what we can do with that is we can do our original list, which is primes, using this new method called extend, and then give it a new list that we're extending it by. And our new list is this teen primes. Okay, so what do you think it's going to do? It's basically taking the tediousness out of doing append, 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 append. It's going to just get this entire list and add it to this list. Let's see if that worked. So I'm going to now check what happened to primes. Primes, primes. Well, to be safe, let me first screw it up just so I can explain what's going on. So I'm going to run this, and we can see primes has now become this. All right. What if I ran this again? I ran it once. What if I ran it again? Whoops. And again, whoops. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Help. Why is it doing this? Because in this code, it's overriding primes. It's getting rid of what we originally had as primes and adding on to it. So if that's not what you want, then I should probably include this code as part of this code block. See, in the last code block or cell, we had started to create primes, but this one is only adding more to primes. So if you wanted this to be reproducible, use one whole code block so that it creates primes and then it'll slowly add to it. This is a big, remember how I mentioned, oh yeah, list, it's so easy to add new stuff, to change it. Here's an example of one that can, that fact that it's so easy can be easy to mess up, right? So if you want this to be reproducible or it's not adding more and more junk, let's move this code in the same code block. So it's always gonna make a fresh copy of primes and then add on in each step. All right. So far, so good. Help me out. I want to now add this list to primes. What would I do? Try extending primes by adding on middle aged primes. What would you do?
Prime equals prime plus middle.
Primes plus, did you say the middle age?
Yeah. Prime equals prime plus middle aged.
You want to try doing primes plus?
I'd say equals itself plus.
Oh, yes. Okay. So that is if we do it manually, but these methods are doing it for us. So it's actually, so this is like short for doing primes equals to overwrite the original primes and then adding on the new stuff we want. So we can do that, but then if you use dot extend, it's already doing the primes equals for us. Yep, looks good. Same code block. But yeah, there's many ways of doing the same thing, actually. That's a good thing to note. All right, and let's print it out to see what happens. And it's finally become what did I misspell? Middle aged primes. Ta-da. Any questions?
Can you mix variable types of float and whatnot with these integers?
Yes, you can. So lists are very flexible. I think that comes up in this lesson. Let me check. Pretty sure. I believe it does. If not, then we can demonstrate that pretty quickly. All right, let's try getting rid of something. I don't remember. Why don't we try it? Whenever the nice thing about coding like this, where it's reproducible, is if I wonder if it works. Honestly, just try it. See if it works. So can I add teen primes at the same time? Maybe. Can I use a comma? Play with it. See if it happens. Didn't work. All right, so that didn't work. Can I do a different way? That's possible. So I'm not going to say no. Off the top of my head, it's not coming to me, but I wouldn't say it's impossible for sure. You can definitely do a lot of things in one line. And I don't think we cover those things in this lesson, but there are things like that you can look up called list comprehensions, where you can stuff so much in just one single line of code. Like it's list creation, like conditionals that we'll get a chance to go through later. It just does so much within one line of code. So I wouldn't be shocked if we could do that.
Did you just chain another extend to make it one line?
That works too. Now I'm just playing with this, which is what happens when you code. You want to keep trying new stuff, right? So this one didn't like it. So that method didn't work. Everyone tried the plus method? That worked? My goodness, we have so many new, or maybe not new, but we have many coders that we have encountered in this class. So that's quite exciting. So keep all of that excitement, and once you're done with our workshop, don't let that momentum stop. That's when you really start to have fun with what we're doing, right? I think a lot of the coding issues that people have is just, it's kind of scary looking, right? I'm going to start the next example. But when you overcome that, when you start to have fun with it, it really starts to make things just kind of, I mean, it's going to increase your productivity. But at the same time, you're going to have fun with it. Okay, now we're going to start to see what happens when we want to delete stuff. So for this example, I'm going to show before and after deleting. Oh, yes, question? Nope. Okay. How do we delete stuff? So we can use this function called del. Okay. It's going to look a little different. It's not going to be like a dot anything. We can use del. Del what? Well, it depends on what we want to use. We want to get rid of the last item. What was the last item in terms of the index? Which index is this? Yep, index 4. So we want del primes index 4. And then let's look at what that is now. It's gone. We did it. All right. Any questions about how do we append? How do we extend? How do we delete from lists? All good. Okay. Do you like lists? Well, this might be another reason why you may like lists. So we only see integers here, right? But can we play around with it? Can we add other stuff in our list? And the answer is yes. Okay. So maybe you have a data structure, those like goals, and in that you want to have a list that has like the first one, and then next to it you want to have like some description of what this is going to be. So as a string, you can say, well, our goal was to create lists. Okay, then maybe the next data point will be a 2. And there it would be something like, oh, we extracted items from lists and so forth. Okay, well, I guess I might as well finish this. And then For a third goal, we were able to modify lists. And don't forget to close that with the square bracket. And if I check out, what does that look like? You can see based off the quotes that our first index is string, our zero index is integer. So you can mix different types of data. All right, so that can be very helpful. Now, let's see. We're going to come back to lists, but similarly, we can do things that like indexing, or also known as like slicing, with a string. So let's try playing with that. So let's look at some strings. So let's make a basic string. Maybe we're talking about elements like carbon. Okay, so that's a string. How do I know? Because those two quotes, right? And I'm going to save this into an object name called element. And what if I want, for some reason, specific characters? So not the whole string of carbon, but like maybe I want the C or the O. Okay, so let's see if we can get just the C. Well, pretend then this is kind of like a list. If this was a list, what would you do just to get the first one? You would do element, and which index is the C? 0. Good. Does that work? Oh, it works. Isn't that cool? So this whole indexing of specific characters works similarly within strings. Okay, so let's give some info about what we're doing. So we're printing the 0th character. Help me print the third indexed character. Third index.
Finland.
Yep, element. Oops, got my quote. And which one is that? Wow, this is not a good example. I gave you the answer. 3. Never mind. I should have asked it and then not written the description. B and C. Maybe add a little colon there to make it look nicer. But does that make sense that we can index specific letters that we want? All right. Now, let's try something that won't be the same as a string. So if you remember, I was able to change those numbers of like the pressures. So for example, I can say, oh, the first indexed value for pressure, I'll change the number. Can I change it here? I don't know, let's find out. Maybe it's like, can I change C to capital C? Well, if I just kind of did the same way I did before, we did like this, right? And then I just replace it. Does that work? And cannot do it. So string does not support item assignment. You are not allowed to change specific characters like this. So it turns out that we've uncovered this property, what's called mutability. Basically, when you can change different values in place, we consider that as mutable, right? But this one, a string, once you've created the string, that's it. Like this string is this string. You can't change any particular value of it, all right? You would have to create a new one, a whole new string. Change the C by itself, that means it's immutable. Can't change it after you create it. Okay, so nope, strings are immutable. So don't be surprised if we have an error. All right. Other errors that can happen. So maybe we forgot how long this thing was, carbon, and I'm like, oh, I want the 10th character. That could happen. So what does the 10th character look like? You're probably thinking, what 10th character? Eh. So that index, we can't just throw in any number we want. It has to be a number that is within the length of this element, right? So just because I can write a 10 in there doesn't mean there exists anything in index number 10. I think that makes pretty much intuitive sense, right? Okay. How are we doing? Ready for some challenges? Okay, so let's try some challenges. I'm going to paste this here, right here. So let's have a challenge. Let's see which one is going to be good. How about this one? This is like with our indexing. So I want it so that we're going to fill in this right here, right? So this underscore is where I want everyone to change it, okay? So what am I trying to do? I basically want to have the following output. So I want, oh, actually this will look better as a markdown. So I want the output to look like this. So what can I do to make it look like this? So that's our challenge. Why don't we take like 5 to 10 minutes on it and see how we do. So knowing what we know about lists, if the first time you print it, you should get 135. And then the second time should be just 35. Wait a minute, I think I went too far. Ugh. I think I forgot to show you one last thing. Sorry, that's our challenge after I show you this. Okay, so looking ahead at that challenge, it seems like we're going to need to select specific values, right? So similarly to what we just did, we can choose a single index. We can also take different ranges or slices of indices, right? So this works for a list or a string. So I'm going to go and check out my primes. So let's take a look at slicing. If I look at my primes, all of my primes, okay. Oh, and helpers, this one is kind of off the cuff, so please paste this in there. And then I only want some of them, okay? But first, let's check out all of them. 2, 3, 5, 7. Maybe I only want 2, 3, and 5. So if you remember when we were doing this with the data frame, the iLock, it's very similar. Okay, so I want just the first 3 primes. Okay, so what should I do to primes that will give me that? So I want to start at the 0 position, which is 2, and I want to go to 5. All right. So the weird thing is with Python, you actually are going to specify where do you want to stop at. Okay. So I want 2, I want 3, I want 5. I don't want 7. So the position you wanted it to stop, which is where the 7 is what you should put after a colon. Okay. So I want 2, 3, 5, and I want to stop at index 4. So don't include 4. And there we messed up because I can't add 0, 1, 2. I said 0, 1, 2, 4. No, 0, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So then there we go. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Sorry about that. Did everyone catch that? So if I put 4, then that's 0, 1, 2, 3. 4 is outside. So that means it will give me everything. So 0, 1, 2, 3. I don't want index 3. So that means I should go from 0 to 3, and it will not give me what's at index 3. Right, so it's a little bit strange, but you get rather used to it after a few times. Okay. So far, so good. Let's try that with our element. So all characters in element carbon I just want carb in element. What could we do? Zero to 3. Let's try that. Close. So I got a carb. I want carbs or carb for lunch too. So then that's position, 0, 1, 2, 3. And I don't want 4 because I want to stop at 4. The nice thing about this coding thing is you can actually play with it and then adjust it till it works. Yeah, okay, good. All right. How about this? I want arb in element. What do you think that is? Not carb, but arb.
1 through 4.
Yep. So that means we're starting at A, which is 1, because 0, 1. And then, again, stopping at 4. We got arb. So now we know how to slice different pieces of lists and strings. Any questions about that? Now, what if I want bond in element? So I'm going to start elements. I'm going to start at 1, 2, 3, 0. Sorry, 0, 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay. Let's try that. 3 to 6. Bond. Very good. Here's something though that you can do. Sometimes strings or lists, you don't really know what the end position is, because what if this is like literally a sentence and this went on for like 5,000 characters? I'm not going to go and sit and count everything. So for convenience, if you leave the last one blank, so if you leave that blank, it's going to know to go to the end. So if I did that, it's the same thing. So if you delete the last one, The second one number after the colon, it knows you mean all the way at the end. Okay. Okay. Any questions on what we just did? Now we can do this. Okay, so now let's take 5 to 10 minutes to work on this challenge. And someone help me with the timing. I'm not good with checking where we are on the time. Are we good on time?
I think you're doing okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, why don't we take, well, when you got it, go ahead and put up the green okay symbol. I'm gonna give a little hint. This one, maybe it's not super clear. Little hint. For the first one, I wanted values to be a list, but I wanted it to be blank. So we already know that lists, it needs to have a square bracket, but if it's going to be a blank list, then you just have 2 square brackets, that's it. Right, so we're having a blank list. There's nothing in it, but it's still a list. Okay, there was the hint. Okay, it looks like we got we got a lot of people who got through it. All right, let's go walk through it. So with this blank list, if I know it, I'm gonna need to, what does that look like? I started with something blank and now I need to add new values. How can I do that? And this one's saying it's gonna look something like this. How do I add this 1 to this list? Good. Yeah, we can use the append method. All right, good. And now it says that from this original list, I only want to subset or slice it, so I just get 3 and 5. So how do I do that? Just 3 and 5. Yep. All right, so that would be 1, 3. And there we go. All right. Did anyone try a different way? Yes. So if you know that's going to go all the way to the end, you can just skip and you should get the same thing. So either is fine. So it's a little flexible. Okay. Let's see. Let's see if we want another challenge or good to go to the next one. Oh, you know what? That's pretty important. You know what? Sometimes we like strings, we like lists, but we want to flip them back, right? You want to go, oh, that's another one. You're right. So even though this template kind of gave you a hint, it wanted you to do that, that's not the only way. You can actually change the list itself by deleting the first element. Yep, that would have worked too. Okay, what if we want to switch back and forth between lists and strings? Okay, so switching between lists and strings. So why would I want that? Turns out you will. When you're trying to make different programs, you need flexibility. Like you don't always want something to be in one way. You may need to convert it. Super common when you're creating your data visualizations like we just did. We had something that was a string, but we needed it to become an integer. So similarly, we can change things from strings to lists. So maybe I have a string and it's going to be 10. I want to convert this to a list so that every letter is going to be an element in a list. Okay, so we can quickly do that with a function called list. So that's not surprising. Look what happened. So I started with my string 10, and then I convert it to a list where every letter is going to be its own value within a list. All right, so that was an example of printing a string to a list. Okay. So what if I want to convert all of this into a string? So let's try with a different example. So maybe I have this like list where it has 4 elements, another one, and it's spelling gold. And it's like, actually, I want to go and put this back into a string. How would I do that? So this one may not be that intuitive, but what you can do is you can use the join function. But this one's a little weird, right? So if I try to do this, right, it's a join function, but the weird thing is that the join function lives as a method inside strings. Huh? So if I try to run it, it's not going to work because the join is similar to like append. Append lives inside of value, or it lives inside of lists. Okay, so this join needs to come out of a string, but I don't have a string. Well, remember right here when we did values have anything in it? No. So even a blank list will have these types of methods like append and extend. So similarly, even a blank string will have methods like join. So this is kind of interesting, but you're going to give it a blank string, which is just 2 quotes. And then now you can call this function called join. Even the blank string has methods. Kind of cool. So now when you do that, you can see that it will combine it into a single string called gold from the original list. Right? So what did we just do? We printed an example of a list to a string. Ta-da! Okay. What do you think would happen? Oh, I know. What if I tried something different? Like I did a something dot join, right? Or blank dot join. What if it wasn't fully blank? Like maybe it was a dash. Okay. And then I did dot join. And this case, I'll do a new list called XYZ. All right. So instead of blank, it's this little dash. Oh, look at that. What did we just do? It's a string, but now it's separated by a dash. Hey, what if I want it to be comma separated? Put a comma. Oh, look at that. What if I wanted to be comma and a space? Wow, look at that. So you can play with this so that you can change your strings in a way